Revenge with Marvella. I stood before the bench with my hands trembling, though not from the 73 years I'd lived. The court clerk looked down at me over her glasses and sighed so loudly that everyone in the gallery heard it clearly. "Ma'am, the probate division for confused seniors is downstairs. You're clogging up my docket here." Scattered laughter rippled through the room behind me. I heard my daughter Victoria's sharp, cruel giggle above all the others. That sound cut deeper than any knife ever could. I didn't argue or explain myself. Instead, I reached into my worn leather purse and pulled out a black envelope sealed with dark red wax. I pushed it across the polished wood toward the clerk. She rolled her eyes again and reached for her rejection stamp, clearly ready to dismiss me like I was nothing. Then she saw the seal. Her hand froze in midair. The stamp clattered onto her desk. Something in her expression changed from annoyance to confusion, then slowly toward something that looked almost like fear. The clerk's fingers shook slightly as she broke the wax seal. I watched her eyes move left to right, reading the single line of text printed on the cream-colored paper inside. Her face went completely pale. She stopped breathing for what felt like forever. The laughter and whispers in the courtroom died away as the silence stretched on and on. 10 seconds. 15.
20.
Finally, she looked up at me, then back down at the paper, then at me again. When she leaned toward her microphone, her voice cracked like breaking glass. Mission number 4, Zulu 7. Echo is active and confirmed. All electronic recording devices must be disabled immediately. Clear the secure channel now. I heard gasps behind me. The red lights on all 3 courtroom cameras blinked off one by one. My daughter Victoria's confident smirk melted off her face like ice cream in summer. She looked at her expensive lawyer, who suddenly seemed very interested in his briefcase. The judge leaned forward, staring at me with new eyes. 3 months earlier, everything had been different. It was my 73rd birthday, and my daughter Victoria had insisted on hosting a dinner at the expensive restaurant downtown. I should have known something was wrong when she invited my supervisor from work, Mr. Caldwell. Victoria stood up with her wine glass raised, and I smiled, expecting a toast. Instead, she pulled out a glossy brochure and placed it in front of me. Peaceful Meadows Memory Care Facility. The cover read.
My smile died.
"Mom, we've all noticed you're slipping," Victoria announced to the entire table. "I've already secured emergency guardianship papers. It's for your own safety." I looked at Mr. Caldwell, my boss for 12 years, waiting for him to defend me. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Victoria's right, Helen," he said quietly. "You've become a liability. This is the best choice." My fork clattered onto my plate. Nobody at that table wished me happy birthday. When I returned home that night, my key wouldn't turn in the lock. I stood there confused until I heard the sound of furniture scraping across my wooden floors. 2 uniformed movers were carrying my grandmother's antique writing desk, the one thing I'd asked to keep after my husband died, out through my front door. Victoria appeared on my porch, dangling my spare keychain from her finger. "The house is sold, Mom. Don't make this difficult." My throat closed up. "What are you talking about? This is my house." She smiled that cold smile I'd been seeing more and more lately. "Actually, it's been in my name for over a year now. You signed the transfer papers yourself, remember?" I didn't remember, but lately I couldn't remember lots of things. As the door slammed in my face, I checked my wallet. $47. That was all I had left in the world. I sat down on the curb and put my head in my hands. I don't know how long I sat there before I heard the bushes rustle. My grandson Tyler crawled out, his jeans covered in dirt and leaves. He was 9 years old, small for his age, with his father's dark eyes. The family said Tyler hadn't spoken a single word in 3 years, not since his dad left. But he looked around carefully, then leaned close to my ear. "They're lying about everything, Grandma, especially the money." His voice was whisper quiet, but perfectly clear. He pressed something small and cold into my palm, a USB drive wrapped in tape.
"Run.
Please run." Before I could respond or even process what was happening, a black van pulled up to the curb. Not a police van. Not an ambulance. Something else entirely. The door slid open, and a woman in a dark gray suit stepped out. She looked at me, then at Tyler, then back at me. Agent 4 Zulu, you've been off-grid for 28 years. That ends tonight. I hadn't heard my mission designation since 1997, back when the Cold War was barely over and I was building security systems that didn't officially exist. The woman's name was Agent Pierce. She drove me to a safe house on the industrial side of town while I sat in shocked silence. I don't do that work anymore, I finally said. I'm just an accountant now.
I'm nobody.
Pierce glanced at me in the rearview mirror. Helen, you built the first secure financial tracking system for international asset recovery. You're not nobody, and your daughter knows it. She handed me a burner phone through the partition. Whatever she's doing, it's big enough that it triggered alerts in 3 federal databases. We need you to find out what. She pulled up to a warehouse. I'm not here for a mission, I told her as I climbed out. My hands were steadier than they'd been in months. I'm here for a war. Pierce almost smiled. Good. The safe house was actually a furnished apartment above an auto shop. It smelled like oil and old coffee, but it had a secure computer terminal. I plugged Tyler's USB drive into the system with shaking fingers. What appeared on the screen made my blood run cold. Bank statements, transaction logs, email records. But not mine, Victoria's. Her consulting firm wasn't consulting on anything legitimate. She was moving money in complicated patterns, washing it through shell companies and offshore accounts. The deeper I scrolled, the clearer it became. She wasn't working alone. Mr. Caldwell's tech company was on every third transaction. They were laundering money, hiding assets, and falsifying records. And I was the only person who could recognize the specific pattern. My memory loss wasn't random age or coincidence. It was carefully constructed to keep me from ever looking at these books. Someone had deliberately tried to make me forget what I knew. Someone had tried to erase me. I kept scrolling until I found a file labeled H_medical. My hands froze on the keyboard. Inside were medical consultation records, prescription orders, and progress notes. For 6 months, Victoria had been meeting with a private doctor. The notes were clinical and cold, patient's mother showing desired symptoms. Confusion increasing as planned. Tremors documented. Short-term memory disruption confirmed effective. Below that was a list of supplements. Natural-looking bottles with harmless names. But the chemical formulas listed beside them told a different story. Synthetic compounds designed to mimic early dementia symptoms. Drugs that caused hand tremors, brain fog, and memory gaps. Victoria hadn't been waiting for me to get old or sick. She'd been making me sick. Every morning for 6 months, she'd brought me tea with honey. Told me the supplements would help my bone density. I trusted her completely. I looked down at my hands. The tremors had already stopped. I hadn't had her tea in 3 days. The next morning, I put on my oldest cardigan and worn shoes. I messed up my hair and practiced looking confused in the mirror. Then I took the bus to Victoria's downtown office building. The security guard barely glanced at me as I wandered past his desk, acting lost and calling out for my daughter. Ma'am, you can't just... But I was already shuffling toward the elevators, playing the part perfectly. I found Victoria's floor and wandered the halls until I spotted her through a glass wall. She sat at the head of a conference table, laughing with 4 men in expensive suits. The acquisition of my mother's assets saved us from the Q3 audit entirely, she was saying. Sometimes you have to make hard choices in business. I kept my face blank and confused. But under the conference table, I placed a small device no bigger than a quarter. Then I shuffled away, mumbling about looking for the bathroom. Nobody stopped me. Nobody even looked twice. That evening, something interesting happened at Caldwell Technologies. An anonymous video appeared on their internal messaging system. Not a leak to the press, not yet. Just visible to every employee in the company. The video showed Victoria and Mr. Caldwell in her office, glasses of wine in hand, laughing. Liquidating the old woman's assets before she figured anything out was genius, Mr. Caldwell said on the recording. Your mother built the system, but she's too far gone to see us using it. Victoria raised her glass. to covering Q3 losses with family money. Mom would be proud if she could remember what money was. I watched the company's stock price on my laptop. It started dropping within an hour. By midnight, Victoria called me 17 times. I didn't answer. I just listened to her voicemails getting more and more frantic. Mom, where are you? Mom, we need to talk. Mom, please, this is important. I deleted every single one without responding. Victoria's panic became real action. She rushed to my old house, her house now, and went straight for the floor safe hidden behind the basement shelves. I knew she would. I'd taught her where it was when she was 16. The safe held all my important papers. Property deeds, insurance policies, stock certificates, everything. Victoria spun the combination lock with shaking fingers. The safe opened. Inside was completely empty except for a single index card. On it, I'd written 5 words. Check the mission number. I watched her face through the hidden camera she'd installed months ago to spy on me. Her expression went from confusion to understanding to pure terror. She had no idea what a mission number was, but she was smart enough to know it meant something bad for her. She pulled out her phone and called Mr. Caldwell. "We have a problem," she said. "My mother wasn't as far gone as we thought. I think she's been playing us." Victoria tried a desperate move the next day. She called in a wellness check to the police, claiming her confused elderly mother was missing and possibly in danger. 2 police officers and a paramedic crew showed up at the safe house address. I'm not sure how she found it. Maybe she'd put a tracker on my phone months ago. The paramedics came upstairs with a stretcher and sedatives, talking to me in slow, loud voices like I was a child. "Ma'am, your daughter is very worried. We're going to take you somewhere safe." Agent Pierce appeared in the doorway behind them. She didn't show a badge or say a word. She simply held up a red folder with federal seals on it. The lead paramedic looked at it, went pale, and immediately backed toward the door. "We're sorry for the disturbance," he stammered. They left faster than they'd come. Outside, I saw Victoria sitting in her car, watching. Her face twisted with confusion and rage when the paramedics left without me. Mr. Caldwell called an emergency meeting that weekend. I know because Tyler, who nobody realized could hear and understand everything, recorded it on Victoria's laptop. "The audit is coming whether we like it or not," Caldwell said. "If Helen testifies or provides documents, we're finished. You need to eliminate the problem permanently." Victoria's voice was cold. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "An incapacity hearing. Emergency guardianship. We get a judge to declare her mentally unfit, and everything she says becomes the confused rambling of a sick old woman. We can have her in a locked facility by Monday." Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she agreed. They scheduled the hearing for Monday morning at 9. They thought they were taking away my voice. They didn't realize they were giving me the perfect stage. I saved Tyler's recording in 3 separate places. Then I called Agent Pierce. "I need a favor," I said. "A big one." She didn't even hesitate. "Name it." I tracked down Franklin Hayes, the retired accountant who'd worked with my husband before he died. Franklin was 81 now, living in a nursing home, but his mind was still sharp as broken glass. He looked at me with sad, knowing eyes. "I wondered when you'd come asking, Helen." He told me the truth I'd suspected, but never wanted to believe. 22 years ago, my husband discovered financial irregularities in Mr. Caldwell's early companies. He'd been ready to report it. Then he died of a sudden heart attack at 53. Healthy one day, dead the next. "The autopsy said natural causes," Franklin whispered. "But your husband told me the week before that someone had been following him. He was scared, Helen." I think Victoria learned everything she knows about covering up crimes from watching what happened to her father. The room spun around me. "Are you saying my daughter helped murder her own father?" Franklin shook his head. "I'm saying your daughter learned that in her world, inconvenient people disappear." I went through my husband's belongings that night, the boxes I'd kept in storage for over 20 years. In a hollowed-out book, I found a cassette tape labeled for Helen, "If anything happens." My hands trembled as I found an old tape player and pressed play. My husband's voice filled the room, and I started crying immediately. Helen, if you're hearing this, I'm probably gone. I've discovered something that connects Caldwell's company to international money laundering. I've documented everything and set up a failsafe with the Department of Justice under something called a mission number. I used your old designation, 4 Zulu, 7 Echo. If you ever need it, the password to unlock the final evidence vault is the date Victoria told her first major lie. You'll know which one I mean. I love you. Protect yourself. Don't trust anyone who profits from your silence. The tape ended. I sat in the dark and cried for an hour. Then I dried my eyes and got to work. The date was March 14th, 2003. The lie was when Victoria claimed she'd been accepted to Harvard. Monday morning arrived. I walked into that courtroom with my head high despite the clerk's dismissive attitude. Now, in the present moment, I stood watching the judge stare at me with fear and respect mixing on his face. The clerk still looked frozen in shock. Victoria jumped to her feet, her chair screeching against the floor. This is absurd. This is some kind of trick. She's a confused old woman who found some ancient government paperwork and doesn't understand what it means. Her voice was shrill, desperate. The judge didn't look at her. He banged his gavel once, hard. Ms. Victoria Brennan, you will sit down immediately, or I will have you removed in handcuffs for disrupting a federal security proceeding. Do you understand me? Victoria's lawyer was already packing his briefcase. He stood up, straightened his tie, and walked out of the courtroom without saying a single word to his client. Victoria watched him go, her face crumbling. Your Honor, please, sit down.
Victoria sat.
She looked small suddenly. The judge turned back to me. Agent, proceed. The judge instructed the clerk to open the secondary sealed file attached to my original envelope. The clerk's hands still shook as she broke the second seal and began reading aloud. Property deed for 847 Riverside Drive. Recorded owner, United States Department of Defense, Strategic Asset Division. Custodian, Helen Marie Brennan. Designation 4 Zulu, 7 Echo. Victoria made a choking sound. The clerk continued. Said property serves as secure communications node and classified document storage facility. Any unauthorized sale, transfer, or access constitutes federal espionage and treason. The courtroom was dead silent. I'd never owned that house. The government had. I was simply the guardian of a high-security location. By selling it to private buyers, Victoria had technically sold a state-secret facility to unauthorized parties. The judge looked at Victoria with disgust. Ms. Brennan, do you understand what you've done? Victoria couldn't speak. She just shook her head over and over, her face completely white. Behind me, I heard several people get up and quietly leave the courtroom. They knew what was coming next. The courtroom doors suddenly burst open with a bang. Mr. Caldwell strode in flanked by 3 lawyers in suits that probably cost more than my car. He walked like he owned the building, confident and smooth. Your Honor, this is clearly a misunderstanding involving outdated national security protocols, he said in his practiced, calming voice. I'm here to provide context and clarity on behalf of Ms. Brennan, who is obviously confused about the nature of her property, and he stopped talking because Agent Pierce had stepped directly into his path. But he didn't see her as a threat. He smiled at her dismissively. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to, Mr. James Caldwell, Pierce said loudly and clearly. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. The smile slid off his face. 2 federal marshals appeared from the back of the courtroom. Mr. Caldwell's expensive lawyers didn't move to help him. They knew better. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small remote. I pressed the single button on it. The courtroom's audio system crackled to life. My voice came first. Testing. Recording active. Then, crystal clear, Mr. Caldwell's voice filled the entire courtroom. If the old woman doesn't die in the facility naturally, we'll need to help things along. Make it look like she fell or choked on something. Nobody questions when old people die. Victoria's response. I can manage that. I've done harder things. Gasps echoed through the gallery. One of the court reporters covered her mouth. The judge closed his eyes briefly, his jaw tight. Mr. Caldwell's face, went purple with rage. That recording is illegal. It's inadmissible. It's played in a federal courtroom during an active security investigation, the judge said coldly. Which makes it very admissible, Mr. Caldwell. Marshals, remove him. As they handcuffed him, Mr. Caldwell screamed at Victoria. You said she was nothing. You said she was just a senile old woman. You said this was safe. Victoria said nothing. She just stared at the table. The judge turned his attention to Victoria. His voice was tired and disgusted. Miss Brennan, you came into my courtroom today seeking to have your mother declared mentally incompetent. Since you were so eager to find a facility for her, I've found one for you instead. He signed a paper with sharp, angry strokes. You're under arrest for elder abuse, fraud, attempted murder, and treason. Bailiff. But Victoria still had one card left to play. She stood up, and despite everything, she smiled. It was a broken, desperate smile, but it was there. You can't arrest me, Your Honor. You can't touch me. She pulled out her phone. I've already moved the $28 million to an offshore account that none of you can trace or touch. I'm not stupid. I planned for this. She looked at me with pure hatred. You'll never see that money again, Mother. I made sure of it. The courtroom buzzed with shocked whispers. The judge started to respond, but I held up my hand. It was finally my turn to speak. I stood up slowly and pulled my laptop from my bag. Tyler helped me set it up on the table, his small hands steady and sure. I opened it and turned it so Victoria could see the screen. Victoria, do you remember who built the firewall system for International Secure Bank? My voice was calm and clear. The system you've been using for the last 6 months? Her smile started to fade. That was 30 years ago, Mom. Technology has changed. You don't. I didn't just build it, sweetheart. I built in a back door. For emergencies exactly like this one. I typed in a command sequence I'd memorized in 1994 and never forgotten. I've been watching every transaction you made. I didn't just track where you moved the money. I hit the enter key. Victoria's phone pinged in her hand. She looked down at it. The notification said, account balance, $0. Transfer completed to original account holder, Helen M. Brennan. Victoria's face went completely slack.
No.
No, that's impossible. I turned the laptop around so everyone could see. $28,412,306. Back in the account you stole it from. I closed the laptop. Your move.
Victoria collapsed.
Not dramatically, but like her strings had been cut. She fell to her knees beside the defense table, her expensive dress pooling around her on the floor. Mom, please, she said, and her voice cracked. Please, I did it for Tyler. I did it because we needed money. His father left us with nothing. I was desperate. She started crawling toward me, reaching out with shaking hands. I know I went too far. I know I hurt you, but I'm your daughter. Please don't do this. For just a second, I felt something soft in my chest. The memory of holding her as a baby, teaching her to ride a bike, braiding her hair before school. But then I remembered her laugh at my birthday dinner. I remembered the poison in my tea. I remembered her planning to help me die in a locked facility. I stepped back, pulling my hands away before she could touch me. My voice came out colder than I knew I could sound. I'm not your mother right now, Victoria. Right now, I'm Agent 4, Zulu 7 Echo. And the mission is over. The judge ordered Victoria taken into custody. The bailiff had to help her stand because her legs wouldn't work properly. As they led her past me toward the door, she looked at me one last time. There was no anger anymore, just emptiness. When did you know? She whispered. I thought about that. The first time you brought me tea with honey, I said. It tasted bitter underneath. I just didn't want to believe what it meant. She closed her eyes. They took her away. Mr. Caldwell was already gone, still shouting threats about lawyers and lawsuits that everyone knew wouldn't matter. The courtroom slowly emptied. Agent Pierce approached me and held out her hand. I shook it. That was impressive work, Helen, she said. The department would like to discuss bringing you on as a consultant. There are other cases like this one. Other people who need someone with your specific skills. I looked at Tyler, who stood quietly beside me, holding my purse. I'll think about it, I said. Pierce nodded and left. The judge called me back to the bench privately. Ms. Brennan, the judge said quietly, I want you to understand what happened here today. You stopped a criminal conspiracy, yes. But you also just sent your daughter to federal prison for a minimum of 15 years. I nodded. I know. Can you live with that? I looked at him directly. Your Honor, she poisoned me for 6 months. She stole my home. She planned to lock me in a facility and let me die. Then she tried to have me killed when that didn't work fast enough. I paused. The question isn't whether I can live with sending her to prison. The question is whether I could have lived with letting her get away with it. The judge studied my face for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. The property deed will be restored to you this week. You'll have full access to your accounts by tomorrow morning. Is there anything else the court can do for you? I thought about it. Yes, actually. I need temporary custody of my grandson, Tyler. His mother is going to be unavailable for a while. The judge looked at Tyler and smiled sadly. Granted immediately. 3 weeks later, I sat in my house, my real house, with all the locks changed and the title properly in my name. The Peaceful Meadows brochure burned in the fireplace, the edges curling black. Tyler sat at the kitchen table eating scrambled eggs and toast, actually laughing at a cartoon on his tablet. He talked now constantly, making up for 3 years of silence. Agent Pierce had called twice about consulting work. The first case she described sounded almost identical to mine, an elderly veteran being drugged and robbed by his own son. I'd said no the first time, but this morning I'd called her back and said yes. My hands were completely steady now. No tremors at all. The confusion was gone. My memory was sharp and clear. I wasn't a victim anymore. I wasn't even just a survivor. I was someone who knew exactly how these schemes worked and exactly how to stop them. My phone rang. It was Pierce. We have a new case in Oregon, she said. Interested? I looked at Tyler, who gave me a thumbs up. I picked up the phone. Send me the files, I said. I'll start tonight. The mission wasn't over after all. It was just beginning again.